Jane Harrow is one of the commanding officers in the paramilitary group known as Pantheon. Her origins weren't fully uncovered until the last mission of Black Ops 6, Separation Anxiety, where we discovered the truth about Harrow, her personal life, and how she came to be a double agent working for Pantheon. Join me in this video as we go through the life and tragedy of CIA Special Activities Division Operations Specialist Jane Harrow. Jane Harrow was born into a family of two parents, John V. Harrow and Lorraine Harrow. Since we never really got a birth date for Jane Harrow, we could assume that she could have been anywhere from 5 years old to 8 years old, maybe 9 years old if we really want to push it around the year 1960. From the information we got in Separation Anxiety, we can tell that Jane was part of a Girl Scout troop, that being Troop 416 of Point View, Maryland, and from that we can deduce that the Harrows probably resided in the state of Maryland, and possibly that being the birthplace of Jane herself. Before we get further into the video, I want to preface the tragedy before it happened. When we explore further into Jane's memories, we can find ourselves at her office in the CIA when someone from Pantheon, either we can assume Jackson Kane or someone else, slides a floppy disk under her door titled, "For You." She pops the disk into the computer, and there we see a document that reads something like this: From Emerson Black, subject Operation Red Sweep. Authority granted for operation on 9/12/60, window of 2300 to 2310. High degree confidence targets on site. High degree confidence child off site on 9/12. LH and JH considered extremely dangerous. Single operative shoot to kill. Home intrusion cover. September 8, 1960, Emerson Black, Special Activities Division. From the beginning of Jane's memories, we see her chase after her kid self. Let's call this version of Jane Kid Jane. In the beginning sequence of Separation Anxiety, we see Kid Jane run into the house after Good Jane follows her. Good Jane walks into the torn hallway leading into her own room, and she sees Kid Jane and tries to reassure Kid Jane it'll be okay. However, Kid Jane disagrees. Afterwards, Good Jane looks into the mirror and she sees the door to her room. Marshall asks her what happened, and we cut to Good Jane reliving her memories in the eyes of Kid Jane. Kid Jane asks where Mom and Dad are in the house. From the first moment we set eyes on Jane's room, we can tell her parents pushed her to excel in education, like having her ABCs on a chalkboard, a baseball bat in the corner, Troop 416 banner indicating she was in the Scouts group, trophies and medals in the corner shelf, a soccer ball against the wall, a book bag below, a shelf of several books, and so forth. We can see that Jane's parents really wanted her to do excellent in school, and she seems to do so as well. Not only is Kid Jane academically inclined, but to some degree, she also has a thing for athleticism. A little bit more delving into Jane's memories, and we get tossed into finding 3 parts of a broken mirror in a scavenger hunt. In this sequence of memories, we must explore around a frozen world of Vorkuta full of Jane's memories that showcase the places she's been, as well as Kid Jane's loneliness in some areas of this snowy world. Jane finds a little tea party with a riddle where she must count the number of toys or doll guests and double that original number. Afterwards, she finds a little shelf with another riddle as well as her trophies, awards, and badges, then minus the trophies from the badges to get another number. Lastly, she finds a desk in one of the buildings where we can see another riddle. Jane has to find out which 3 papers has the highest grading score out of 10, one being 5/10, another being 8/10, and one more being 9/10. After solving these riddles, she unlocks a piece of the broken mirror, which we'll get later into the video. Based off these riddles, we can tell that perhaps Kid Jane was proficient in math, getting better and better as time had passed, as well as winning many trophies and having several scout badges. These memories reinforce the belief that Kid Jane had excelled in multiple areas, both in athletics and in academic. Marshall remembers that Jane told him that her parents pushed her hard, with Good Jane adding on that it wasn't a bad thing, as those subjects and hobbies stick in the early years of child development. And she reaffirms her statement by explaining that it's a firm and gentle type of parenting style they had for her. Now, when we get to find the next piece of the broken mirror, we find ourselves in a testing facility. From the looks of it, it looks like a different version of the Advanced Combat Research Wing before we got to play in the first version of it in Emergence. As we traverse this wing, we must power on 4 generators in order to get the lift to work, and while doing this, we need to fight several bad Janes. house. We get the second piece of the mirror, and as for the third piece, we obtain it by fighting a bunch of bad Janes in a hellscape, and we make the mirror whole again with the last shard in place. However, let's cut back to the moment where Jane reminisces about getting accepted into Langley. Cut to this part, and Good Jane states she wanted to join the CIA growing up, to which Woods follows up, like your parents, and Bad Jane refers that Good Jane wanted vengeance for the killing of her parents. However, Good Jane states she wanted closure for her parents' death and also finding the truth about what happened that night. Now we covered the tragic part, the murders of Lorraine and John Harrow. On the night of September 12, 1960, a CIA security officer broke into the Harrow's house trying to kill both Lorraine and John Harrow. The intruder shoots Lorraine one time, but we don't see this. What we do see is Lorraine enters Kid Jane's room trying to comfort her, but Jane notices the gunshot wound in her mother's abdomen, so her mother tells her to hide under the bed, but Jane is reluctant to do so, yet she does what her mother told her to do. Knowing that something is wrong, she tells her mom that she loves her, and her mom tells her something similar to the effect, and she hides under the bed waiting for her mom to return. Cut to Jane getting out from underneath the bed. She goes towards the door to see what's going on in the hallway and to see what all the commotion is about. Jane finds her mother in a shootout with someone, and when Lorraine spots Jane, she rushes towards her to protect her daughter, but ends up getting shot 2 more times through the abdomen, killing her in the process while Kid Jane watched her mother bleed out. As Jane sees her mother bleed out, her mom pleads with her to protect herself from the intruder before anything else happens to her. Before Jane can do anything in trying to save his daughter, John rushes to Jane and puts her in a closet to hide her from the intruder. Jane is absolutely terrified to the core, but her father does his best to calm his daughter down. That way the home invader doesn't find and kill her too. He closes the closet doors and he stays in Jane's room to fight off the intruder by himself. John leaves his daughter and he goes towards the door. As he's approaching the door cautiously, however, the intruder shoots through the door and he manages to land a shot on John. The intruder breaks through the door and now both of them start fighting. And not gonna lie, I was definitely cheering for John in this one. However, as fortune has it, or unfortunate has it, yeah, this guy got cooked badly. A fucking skill issue. Ultimately, John Harrow loses the fight, but right before he dies, his attacker decides to toss him around like a rag doll, and before giving the final blow, John pleads for his life. However, the intruder shoots John his back to the mirror, and once he's shot, the mirror shatters completely. However, now we understand that the pieces of the mirror help complete the tragic and traumatic memory that Jane had locked away and she experienced that night in her home. Going back to the scene where we saw Jane get her acceptance letter into Langley, she stated to Marshall that her aunt, her uncle, the newspapers, and the police all said that it was a simple home invasion, which of course was a lie. For Jane at a young age to go through this unfortunate event, this may have needed to be a necessary lie to shield her from the pain, which she most likely didn't appreciate, or due to a lack of evidence at the time pointing this to a home invasion, the police, the newspapers, and Jane's relatives either didn't know what had originally happened, or they all knew what happened, so everyone played their part to suppress the truth from getting out to the public. Regardless of the answer, the truth remained the same. Jane Harrow, as a kid, witnessed the tragedy that took place that night. Later in her life, after learning from Adler that he was a mentor to her and her getting plenty of promotions, she wanted answers to her parents' murders, and even when she had the most access to libraries on file, she discovered her parents' files had been either removed or destroyed completely, as if they never served the CIA or for the fact that they were even alive to begin with. History rewritten just like that. However, one day, someone delivers Jane a floppy disk that had information about the night in question. When she pops in the disk, she reads through the details of the murders and that they were ordered by Emerson Black. Titled Operation Red Sweep, orders were for a single operative to go in and kill the Harrows. Right before the intruder had left the site, he confirmed that the targets were eliminated, and the voice behind the mask is none other than Russell Adler himself. Woods is in disbelief, but Jane insists that it was Adler. However, Woods questions her memory, which in turn made her question her own memory of that night, now believing it wasn't Adler, and someone else who had killed Jane's parents. But let's look at it from Jane's perspective. If you think about it like this, if what Adler said was true and the Rook on the tapes when he was on the run for 10 months, nearly a year, being framed for something that he didn't do, the failed Panama invasion of December 1989, whether he did or didn't, it would be Jane's perfect revenge against her mentor and her parents' killer. During some more deep dive sessions of separation anxiety, Good Jane manages to reveal the location of the cradle attack to Woods before Bad Jane takes over completely, and Good Jane warns Woods that he has to stop her, or Bad Jane, from unleashing the cradle. This is another factor that also leads to the second tragedy, losing Jane. Now when I say losing Jane, I mean the good Jane that had principles, good values, strong beliefs, and a greater goal. Over the years, it becomes apparent that Jane slowly realizes the truth behind the CIA, how they essentially, literally redacted the Harrows out of history. Now, whether Jane joined Pantheon either through recruitment, her own willingness to join in order to get revenge for her family out of spite and hatred for the CIA, or even through brainwashing, I'll leave that for another video. But one undeniable thing is that the old Jane, the good Jane, would have never unleashed a bioweapon upon America, much less its people. And no doubt when she read that letter from Emerson Black, the head of the Special Activities Division that ordered the execution of her parents, it was probably the last nail in the coffin for her to join the Pantheon. All this to say, in theory, Good Jane isn't just gone, she died inside, literally because Bad Jane has taken complete control over Jane's brain, heart, and body. And I wish I could say that the tragedy streak ended for Jane Harrow right then and there. Unfortunately, there's one more tragedy we have to cover, that being Jane's supposed death. When we complete the campaign, we see Case choking the ever-loving shit out of Jane. But in this moment, the fight between Case and Jane ends abruptly when we see that the helicopter ends up landing in the water with fire inside of it, both characters injured and Jane trying to kill Case. Case flips the script, and for some reason, there's a canister of Cradle in the helicopter. Don't ask me why. So the voice in Case's head tells him to use the cradle to injure Jane. Before Case even flipped the script, Jane was beating Case's ass left, right, and center, probably enraged from the cradle in her body already. But Case uses the canister of Cradle, and he does so until the canister cracks, causing Case to go crazy due to the cradle. And now that there's a cradle in the air, there's also a biohazard. Cut back to Case choking Jane, and Jane tries to get Case to refocus priorities into getting out of the helicopter, and we see Case's eyes dim, then black out. We see Jane supposedly die, as well as Case, and the big tragedy here is that all the work Jane did for the CIA, for the Pantheon, for revenge, retribution, it was all for nothing. Jane Harrow wanted to get back at the CIA for the killing of her parents and joined the Pantheon to get revenge against the CIA, but because she most likely died either due to Case finishing the job or she couldn't take air quickly enough before the water outside broke the helicopter door and started flooding inwards, or she drowned in general, it's a high chance that she'll most likely never see her work end in satisfaction and an accomplishment. And that's if she died. If she didn't and somehow survived her encounter with Case, then she's still somewhere working with the Pantheon. But as of the Season 3 trailer revealed all the names of the CIA operatives that worked for the Pantheon, she's just another operative that wanted revenge. And maybe if she survived, she might get her revenge in another season, but I highly doubt it. Me personally, I think she died, and although that's just my opinion, with a little fact to prove it, I stand by it. Hopefully I am wrong, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. This has been the tragedy of Jane Harrow.